the studio, I don't know if it's the same on coverage over there, they're all saying Pascal Gross should have been sent off for the penalty. And I was just saying, they got rid of that. It's the double jeopardy thing. I was saying they got rid of that kind of double jeopardy thing ages ago. But as Josh pointed out, they've got both rules running simultaneously. So they got rid of double jeopardy, but also said you can get a red card if you deny goal, if you don't try and play the ball. But anyway, no one said at half time it should have been a red card.
Yeah, it's only because they drew, because they weren't.
Yeah,
because they weren't.
Jamie Carragher
They weren't winning.
Yeah, it's bollocks. Get in the bin.
Yeah, it feels that way. Episode 229, which is the last of the 2-2s, which is suitable for today's 2-2 fest.
Let's hope so.
Following on from another 2-2 fest the other day.
Exactly, yeah. We've just had all the 2s. 2 2-2 draws to cover today. Today. It is, yeah, you're going to hear that word a lot. That number is everywhere. So let's start with Marseille. Our first ever European away day. At probably, well, I would have said the most intimidating of the three before Ajax started trying to burn down their own stadium. Now it may be like slightly on the same level simply because they like want to like bomb their own stadium at the expense of anyone and everyone. So it's like, it's they're just a bit mental at the moment. But obviously very tough place to go. The classic new manager bounce for Gattuso coming in. And a lot of the players we talked about last week rolled out for them. And it was a rather strong side that came in for the Albion. But let's start from the very beginning, because our man Robin was there on the scene throughout the day. So I guess the floor is yours, early doors, to just walk us through your experience.
It was, I flew from Edinburgh on the morning of the game. And the first thing was, it was wild. There were about 12 Brighton fans on our flight from Edinburgh going to the game, which I didn't expect at all. Including shout out to a couple of guys, if they're listening, from Dundee, who have only missed 2 games in the last year. Which is just like, it's bonkers.
That is some commitment there. Fair play. They are exactly the sort of type of people that should be going to Marseille. They've more than earned it.
So yeah, that was good. Flew into Marseille, had no real issues. Some Albion fans did have a few issues. A lot were flying from the UK to Montpellier, which is a couple of hours on the train to Marseille. And someone was hit by a train early on Thursday morning, which basically knackered the trains. So you had 100 or so Brighton fans on a flight from Gatwick, including Courtney, Josh, who we know, who suddenly found themselves in Montpellier with no way of getting to Marseille. So basically had to hire a fleet of taxis / Ubers to get there, which worked. I think it worked out about 50 or 60 quid each.
Yeah,
so
I think because I think it was like
horrendous.
Between 4 of them, it was about 220 euros or something, something like that.
So that was good. And yeah, one of our friends, David, who was coming from Toulouse, who'd actually been very organised and said, I'll spend the week in Toulouse and then just go to Marseille on the day of the game. He was on the train that hit someone and he didn't make the game.
Oh.
So that's pretty brutal. He ended up watching the second half in our hotel that was right next to the stadium. So I can't think of anything much worse than that, to be quite honest. Anyway, yeah, got to Marseille. Had obviously a Marseille fan as a taxi driver who was a really nice bloke. Knew loads about the club, knew loads about De Zerbi, and similar to us, really, had no idea how the game was going to go. He was sort of like, what are your expectations? And I said, got no frame of reference, having not played away in Europe before. So yeah, no idea. But genuinely nice chat though. He said there'll be no issues, no history between the clubs. There'll be no problems. So yeah, decided to go and check into the hotel that was right by the ground, and then thought, oh yeah, we'll just get the metro back into town, which we thought it'll be fine. And it was. I mean, we were not wearing Brighton shirts or anything, but we were clearly speaking English. There were a lot of Marseille fans already milling around outside the ground whilst we were going back the other way. Again, no issues at all. Ticket collection took about 30 seconds. Very well organised by the club. Just like seamless. You just arrived and it was just there. And then the square they gave us to call it a square is a little bit it's a little bit ambitious, I would say. It was more, just marketplace potentially. It had one sort of cafe with outdoor seating, a Burger King, and like a couple of food trucks, basically. So we didn't spend a huge amount of time there.
Sounds like a party to me.
Yeah,
about you,
really
Craig.
wasn't.
But
The only amusing thing was like it was well, you couldn't get into the square. Like there were sort of riot police dotted around, so you couldn't get in without your ticket. And I know that the French police have a particular reputation, and I know that certain Albion fans in other scenarios that we'll probably get onto in a little bit did have some issues of their own. But my own personal dealings with them, they were brilliant. They as we were walking into the square, one of them sort of stopped us and went, "Palace fan," which was just sort of, obviously, don't know who briefed them, but it was a sort of slightly disarming moment. But yeah, tried to get onto these buses straight away, which was just bedlam. Just, I mean, just the buses were kind of turning up. There was no indication as to. It wasn't like here you need to wait for the buses. Like this will be where bus 1, 2, 3, 4 is. It's like literally, when you're waiting for a tube and you're not quite sure where the doors are going to open. So it's kind of your best guess as to where the bus is going to stop. So it's literally everyone's lining up waiting for these buses, and it kind of just depended on how close you were to a door of a bus that arrived as to whether you were going to get on one or not. Luckily, we got on one about 4:15 or something like that.
I just want to jump in, Mikey in the chat. Welcome back, Mikey in the chat. Feels like a long time since I've said that. Mikey was also in Marseille. He's talking about a pub that took cash only, with the only cash machine charging €6 to withdraw some cash. Something Correct. Tells me that was that's a calculated maneuver there. That's decision. A little, that's a little like FIFA-esque backhander there. That is.
Yeah. That was. So yeah, getting onto the buses for a journey that should have taken 20 minutes and took us just over an hour and a half. To be honest, it was wholly deliberate. The route. I mean, I was following the route on Google Maps, and we were going. It was an enormous circle. Partly, I think, because obviously they wanted. I think from a practical point of view, they didn't want everyone trying to go through the turnstiles at once. So I think it was a deliberate ploy to kind of make it that you arrived at the ground and you pretty much were in the turnstiles and in. But yeah, very annoying, a very bizarre situation. Obviously, full police escort. Sort of, 3 or 4 buses going at a time. Full police escort. Roads closed. Like every road you went past, every carriageway closed. It's a really bizarre experience. I was saying to someone, like, I'd love every away game to be like that. You arrive in the middle of a city and they just literally bus you to the ground and close all the roads. Like, from that perspective, it was brilliant. We had to stop to let both team buses go past us in the traffic, which was brilliant, actually. De Zerbi, we were on bus, and the first Brighton bus goes past, and De Zerbi clocked that we were Brighton fans and was like fist pumping, going absolutely mad, as you'd expect. But yeah, it was absolutely fine. When we got quite close to the stadium, the whole road was obviously lined with Marseille fans, gestures, etc., etc. But it was, to be honest, it was more pantomime than anything else at that point.
Thankfully, it mostly is, right?
Yeah,
like,
it really was. There were I didn't see any Marseille fans around the square. It was nothing like that. Straight into the ground. And yeah, we got in about an hour and 15 minutes before kickoff, something like that. By an hour before kickoff, they'd run out of beer, which was slightly irritating. And the only way you could get any drinks was, can you imagine how it is at the Amex? You've got like the food stations, right? Imagine that. There's a shutter down and there's a window about as big as an iPad screen through which you have to be ordering and being served your food. Like a prison, like a prison cell kind of like slapped to get everything. So yeah, didn't really waste much time trying to do that. And to be honest, yeah, the scale of the stadium. I'd watched some of the Rugby World Cup games on there that were played there, but yeah, enormous ground. And yeah, just to watch the kind of the ultras filtering in, both ends of the ground, different groups. And what was bizarre is I was kind of looking the end of the ground towards where we were. The lower tier was like half empty, like even quite. And I was like, what is going on? And then Courtney pointed out, it was like everyone in the lower tier was climbing the fences to get into the upper tier. So the upper tier is like literally creaking under the weight of about 1.5 times the amount of people who should be in this upper tier. Like just mad. You could see them, like their mates are like hauling them up these fences, etc.
And this is the Marseille fans or the Albion fans?
Yeah, this is Marseille fans. So like
okay,
the ultras,
thank God. At least it's Marseille. Like, oh God, you can see it, can't you? Like all the.
But
fans,
yeah, I mean,
like
it was really like the kind of the thing, and I'd say the noise was deafening. Like you couldn't hear yourself think. It's that level of noise. And I turned to Courtney I was with, and I was like, my only wish for today is that we don't have another Aston Villa. That's what literally as the game kicked off, I was like, I just don't want another Villa. Let's be fine. And then 20 minutes in, it's like, fuck, it's another Villa. And we've travelled quite a long way for this. But I mean, we looked like rabbits in the headlights for the first 20-25 minutes. And to be honest, I don't blame them at all, because the atmosphere was like literally every time Albion fans tried to sing anything, every time our players got the ball, you just got the whistling, which is obviously something we don't get in England. Like every Marseille, like just like, you know, consistent loud whistling. And I was like, I almost wondered whether they'd done any training with De Zerbi just playing really loud whistling over a loudspeaker. But yeah, it was just, you know, it's just getting used to that. And they looked really good. I mean, obviously they came flying out of the traps as you'd expect. Gattuso was like kicking every ball from the technical area. Weird point on that, the technical areas in France, I don't know if it's the same ever in Europe, are massive. They're like halfway down the. They're like halfway down. They did look
very big, yeah,
like enormous amounts.
It was crazy, yeah.
Really
like because there was numerous times where I saw De Zerbi and other and Gattuso almost like on the pitch, and I was just like, he's going to get booked. And then I realized there was like a dotted white line like next to him, and I'm like, he's still like somehow in realm, like
yeah, it was massive. But yeah, unfortunate that Dunk just made a bit of a.
Let's talk about that. Because obviously the first 22 minutes, I think you're right. Like it did feel like we were a little bit deer in the headlights. We had a little bit more possession, but like, you know, all the stats are a little bit more in our favor, except for the main one, right? And that's shots. They had 5 to our nothing, 3 on.
And they were winning they seemed to win every second ball, and they seemed to win the ball back really quickly. So it was that relentless cycle of like we just couldn't keep hold of the ball.
And Craig, I'll ask you this because we watched it against Villa and we just watched it against Marseille. And I was so happy to not see it today against Liverpool. But this just standing there waiting for us to play the ball from the goalkeeper is going to become something we probably see a fair bit this year, isn't it?
Yeah. I think we said just before the Marseille game, I was like, please don't be starstruck with this European stuff. Like, please just go ahead and play your game. But that it must be hard because the stadium looked incredible on TV. I'm sure it looked even better in person. So there are some bits going around saying, you know, we've been found out, and I think some of it is partially true, but I think everyone knew that anyway. It was just that people couldn't really stop it from happening, even though they knew how to. But you know, we've come up against some really good teams. You know, Villa and Marseille are no joke. And you know, we'll come on to Liverpool in a bit, but some of these teams are going to be able to find out. You know, we're not going to run into every game and just blow people over with this tactic. So it's nice to see De Zerbi in the last couple of games mix things up a little bit, and I'm sure we'll go into that. But first 20 minutes, absolute stinker. I'm glad they were able to find their feet and change things up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, the first goal, classic set piece, right? Like comes from a set piece. And then we've now seen a really and either of you, well, I'd love to hear from both of you really on this. Like, what is going on? We have now had 3 games back to back, Villa, Marseille, and now Liverpool, where we seem to be offering a buy one, get one free on goals conceded. Like, this is crazy. And we did it against Villa to go from 1 to 2-0 down. We did it against Marseille in the exact same way. And we did it today against Liverpool. And it is just crazy. Like, what is going on here? Like, it's not sustainable at all.
No, it's not. I think to an extent there is an element of coincidence in there. I think obviously there is a mentality thing there, but I think it's happened against three teams who, whenever I haven't watched so much of Marseille, but Liverpool and Villa, they tend to, like, when they score, they really put their foot on the gas more than a lot of other teams. Like, often one becomes two. So I think to an extent we're suffering from just the run of teams that we've been playing against, but there's definitely something there. I mean, part of it, I think, is what we talked about last week, which is that we don't have a defined first choice back five that we know are going to be there, consistently. But yeah, it was, and it's a lot of it, and it's some of it is just random, unconnected, uncharacteristic errors that players are making as well. Like Dunkey's one the other day,
Dunkey's again today. Right, that's the crazy thing. Mikey in the chat says it, like, he does find it ironic that we've got the leakiest defense in the league now, and Southgate chooses to call up Dunk after we've been spending years on this podcast, Craig, like saying like Dunk is skewed call up, and now like he's probably at his worst form wise that we've seen in a while, and he's playing for England.
Yeah, I think Dunk always makes people look better, right? But I think he's going through, I think the whole defense is going through this, and to Robin's point is the rotation here compared to a consistent back four that you're going to have is tricky. Now you can replace one, but when you're making wholesale changes week in, week out to your back four or your back five, and you're putting Igor instead of Van Hecke, you're putting Webster in instead of Dunk, you're doing Lamptey instead of Veltman, you've got Estepinian and no one else. So when you're doing that wholesale rotation, it kind of is one too many. What you would like to see is what Liverpool do is you replace Matip with Gomez, and that's the only change you make, because it has to stay structured. So yeah, and I think Dunk came out today. We'll come on to Liverpool, of course, but like it just seems that we're sort of rabbit in the headlights as always. It's a cliche, but it's true that as soon as we go 1-0 down, we're kind of like, okay, well the game plan has to change now, because there is no baiting anymore, right? You kind of have to push. You can't get them to press you because they don't want to, because they're already winning. So that's why it's so important for us to always get the first goal. And I think we've referenced it previously, is that if we go 1-0 up, I feel so much more confident. Of course I do. It's a stupid thing to say, but like you feel so assured that it's not going to go wrong. Meanwhile, once they get one, you go, well, how many are going to be in this? It's like buses, right? So it's a weird one, and it's just happened to happen 3 times in a row now. I'd like to see it stop, but I don't know how you stop that, because if you do give up the first goal, they're not going to start pushing, and then we play into their hands a little bit, and that's why De Zerbi's having to mix it up with the Marseille and the Liverpool game. Yeah,
I mean, it's good that we've got a nice, easy one next week, isn't it? Or the week after, whenever it is.
Just a reset. Yeah.
Just a little of a reset button. But yeah, I mean, it was the first, I don't know what happened after 25, 30 minutes, whether De Zerbi got a message on from the sidelines, whether we settled into the game, whether we thought, fuck it, we're going to have to go for this. Otherwise, this game's going to get away from us. But it was like a switch was flicked, because all of a sudden we started to string a few passes together. We looked a lot more composed on the ball. We weren't giving up possession so much. And arguably, we should have gone in at halftime 3-2 up. I mean, Welbeck has to either score that or he has to square it. There's no other way. Like, it just has to be a goal. Dahoud's little outside of the boot flick through for Ansu Fati, that was a really good header and a really good save. Any other day, that's in. And Solly March has a really good chance as well. So suddenly in that 15-minute period, we could have gone in level or in front. So it was weird.
The good news is it continued too, right? Like that's basically how the rest of the game went. And I think one of the big turning points was probably Veretout getting hurt, because that midfield duo was doing very well in that first half and dictating a lot of play. And I think when he went off hurt, it went from, like we were able to pick our chances. And then after that, like we were winning every individual battle, it felt like. Then that's basically when we went along. And of course, if there's ever going to be a first goal scorer in our first away European game, there's only one man that's going to be popping up, isn't there? Like Pascal Gross, of course, once again, popping the ball into the back of the net
good
to bring us
finish.
back into the game. Yeah.
I think Lamptey was my man of the match by a comfortable distance. But he did really well to keep the ball in. But yeah, good finish and yeah, kind of back in it. And then I think we almost immediately then nearly went 3-1 down, didn't we? With the long ball over the top. You just think, here we go. Again, it's kind of classic. That was the Aston Villa narrative. I thought, here we go. We've kind of fortuitously got back into it. And then you get hit on the counter-attack and you think, especially when he cuts inside and you think there's no way that he's not scoring from here. And then Lewis Dunk pulls out one of his couple of times a season, blocks from nowhere.
I mean, it was. I mean, that's the sort of reason why he's getting called up for England. Right?
Yeah,
At the end of the day, like, there's no one else that can make blocks like that. Just astoundingly good. Marseille did come back into it, didn't they? In that after the Gross goal, and then some substitutions were made, and the lad that we're probably going to be talking about a lot this weekend, Mr. João Pedro comes on. We said last week, I think most of us were pretty much in agreement that we want him starting as many games as possible because he looks like he changes a game. And didn't he just change this one, Craig? Like, I don't know about you, but like, it was an immediate change with the way he was pressing, running, like just unbelievable.
It's just the energy, isn't it? I think for those that listened last week, it's just the dynamism that he brings and what he does. Like his pressing is great. Like his passing, his dribbling, he can hold onto the ball. He can sprint. Like it's just, at 21 or 22 now, whatever he is, it's outrageous. But he needs to start all the time. And we saw that today as well. But yeah, as soon as he comes on, changes it, just gives us a little bit something different in between the midfield and the front. And you go on and get a penalty at the end of it.
I've noticed this thing he does, Robin, and I don't know if you saw it like in the stadium, if you've been able to figure out this magic he does, because like he's done it numerous times now, where he'll get the ball out wide, like on the edge of the box, either side of the box, really. He doesn't seem to care, and he'll be facing the touchline, and then like he'll stand still, and then he'll move, and all of a sudden he's like 3 steps inside the box, facing goal. He did it twice against Liverpool today as well. Like. The kid is it's incredible.
It's like a sleight of hand magician, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Like that's genuine. All you see is the end. All you see is the starting point and the end result, and you don't see the bit in the middle. But I agree with you. It's like, and I think obviously defenders haven't yet got any idea how to prevent it. But you're right. I mean, that was he came on and changed the game. Gilmour, similar, I thought was pretty neat and tidy and got us on the front foot. A bit more, and then of course, Lamptey. I mean, the French press the next day were raging about the penalty. Absolutely,
I'm assuming we're all like it was absolutely a pen though. Like the contact was so blatant as well. Like,
it was. And then as we've talked about, I mean, I know we've been on this. Adam obviously wasn't quite ready to yet declare João Pedro as the ice cool penalty man. I've been saying it from literally the first penalty he took. Even in that atmosphere, last minute of the game, 2-1 down, the historic moment, literally everything you want to fling at this argument. I stood there and I was 100% confident he was going to score. 100%. Like I did not have a shred of doubt that he wasn't going to score. And that's bonkers because we talked about it. We've had a patchy history with penalty takers. McAllister was, we got to the point where McAllister was pretty much, nailed on.
He was the guy,
taker. But I mean, all I can say that's all I can say is I didn't have a shred of doubt that he wasn't going to score.
Craig, how about you?
Simple as that.
Did you feel the same confidence? in the 88th
No, so
minute away in Marseille.
I was about to say, I don't think it's Adam. I think it's me that I needed a little bit more convincing. But yeah, he did a good job in convincing me that time. I still like. I'm one of those people that can't really watch penalties anyway. I know De Zerbi turns around as well. Like I hate them a lot. But yeah, I think if you can do it in the 88th minute away to Marseille, then I'm pretty sure you'll be able to do it most other times. So yeah, I just increasingly confident. I think yeah, he's just ice cold, isn't he?
And then to
21 years old as well.
Yeah, exactly.
21.
Then to stand in front of the Marseille ultras, giving it the giving it that was, you know, quality. And it looked like from our end, obviously, then Dunk. I don't know how much it showed on the TV, but Dunk was then on the floor, and we all assumed that he'd been hit by something thrown from the crowd, because it was obviously they were all celebrating down that end, and then literally suddenly Dunky's on the floor. Turned out he fainted.
Oh, great.
So not quite sure why. And then he was then obviously immediately kind of back up because he then took the free kick, you know, probably a couple of minutes later into injury time. But then was getting treatment at the end, you know, was sort of down at the end. So I don't know, but yeah, fainted. Definitely fainted.
And he played again today and looked fine. So
yeah.
It's all a very odd one.
It was a very odd one. And, you know, I was getting greedy, but actually, can you imagine if Lewis Dunk could just knuckleballed a free kick into the top corner in stoppage time? I mean, that would have just been too much to ask, as it turns out. But
yeah,
I think if there was ever a moment where that would have been a nice outcome, it was.
I have to say, you know, I'm over this experiment of Lewis Dunk lining up with dangerous free kicks. I don't know who you want. Like, why is Pascal Gross not taking these free kicks? Like,
he scored one against. Who did he score? Was it West? Scored one in the Amex. Or was it Southampton at home? He scored one at the Amex in the Premier League. That was an absolute thunderbolt.
I don't understand. Like, we've got a lot of players that can hit the ball well.
Yeah,
and like, I know Dunky loves Didier, and like
he loves that idea, doesn't he?
Like, he loves the idea that he can do what Drogba used to do, and basically created like this weird side foot flat knuckleball thing. But like, and I'm sure he practices it a lot, but like, we've got to get this ball out of Lewis's hands, haven't we? Like,
we have. Yeah, we
today.
Really
today, like, that free kick was in a really nice area. Like, give it to João Pedro, give it to Solly March, like, give it to anyone. Like, let's just stop giving it to Lewis Dunk. Or if you're going to give it to Lewis Dunk, give him a layoff first so he can
exactly
hit it. Because like, he's just clowning the wall like immediately, like every time. Like, someone is getting hurt every single time.
Yeah, it is. But, you know, from 2-0 down, you know, even before the game started, I raced into the sunset with a point. So, you know, from 2-0 down, it's a good result. And yeah, I mean, that was the only time, you know, when the first goal went in, if you look at the Marseille Ultras, like, either they weren't watching the game or they didn't care because they didn't miss a beat. You know, normally, like in an English ground, as a goal goes in and you get a little bit of like
apprehension,
or whatever. Nothing. It was like nothing had happened as far as they were concerned. Then the second goal goes in, and that's the only time where it was like, oh, okay. Because I think they'd done the same at the weekend, weren't they?
They had, yeah.
The weekend. So they hadn't won since August. Apparently, this was their first. Tax driver was telling us this was their first sellout of the season. It was supposed to be when they reset. So yeah, that was the only time they looked a little bit miffed. And yeah, I was saying in the chat, their English was definitely good enough to understand 2-0 and you fucked it up. Because that got a bit of a reaction from the guys. And there was a brilliant video, I think we shared it in our chat, of Marseille fans obviously giving the Albion bench shit for the entire game. And then a penalty going in and Carlos Baleba shushing them, which was, I mean, it's obviously I don't know whether he's got any history from when he was playing for Lille with them, but they were obviously.
That was my thought too. Like, I feel like he probably felt more at home than most to be able to just like go with these people.
But yeah, and then obviously so the game itself, you think, fine, we've rescued a point. Yeah, you know, absolutely fine. And yeah, then having to wait an hour and a half to get out of the stadium was slightly irritating. It's a bit bizarre because we were on the top tier, and yeah, couldn't even get down to the lower tier for a while. It's literally like the police were just blocking the staircases. Proper health and safety nightmare. like no one controlling like people coming from the stand into the queue. So it was a proper like it was genuine. After about an hour, it was genuinely quite claustrophobic, and there were like people obviously like dehydrated, just not a nice situation. And then I think there were some that were kept back. If you were towards the back of that queue again, you know, you weren't back at the hotel till midnight. I think the last one's got back, and the game finishes at what, 8:30 French time, something like that. But yeah, not nice. Not a nice atmosphere up there, and I dread to think what it would have been like if we'd have lost. Like obviously everyone was in pretty good spirits because of, you know, the circumstances of the game, but
feels like a winner, doesn't it? Like we've
yeah,
all been
really,
there,
like
late equalizer always feels like a winner.
Yeah,
And like I remember being there at like a Northampton away game, and Akim Fenwa scored 2 in like 4 minutes to go from 2-0 to 2-2, and like it was the worst go home. Like in Northampton as well.
Yeah,
like
it's
of all
dreadful.
places.
So yeah, so to wait there for an hour and a half was irritating. Then getting down, that was the point. That was the one bit of the day where the club were brilliant throughout. I mean, obviously organising the ticket collection, they had their own English-speaking kind of stewards or staff, like directing everyone. End of the game, nowhere to be seen. That's if I'm gonna, and I'm not criticising the club because it's the first time it's the first time I've done this, but constructive feedback would have been to have some people there, because to be honest, the French police, again, they were fine. I know there's a video going around that some of the papers have picked up of an disabled Albion fan who was pushed over, you know, and is sort of lying there on the floor for a while, which is obviously horrendous. But again, my experience of the police was that they were very friendly. They just didn't have the information to tell us. It wasn't they were being deliberately, you know, sort of obstructive or anything like that. It was like they genuinely just didn't know. And there were buses coming to pick people up, but it was a relatively small number of buses. So you pick people up, then you go back into the centre, and then you have to come back to fetch everybody else. And they didn't know when buses were going to come. I mean, we were quite lucky in that our hotel was right by the ground. So we were thinking, really don't want to have to get a bus back into the centre of town to then have to try and come back to the hotel. So the first policeman we spoke to, we said, look, our hotel's just there, mate. There's no Marseille fans on the street, mate. It finished an hour and a half ago. Can we just go and walk, you know, the 200 metres to the hotel? And the first French policeman was like, no, absolutely not. We've got to wait for the bus. And then, so we're in the queue. And then I don't know if it was a different, because in France, they seem to have like 3 or 4 different police forces, which is really confusing. So this other guy, I don't know if it was from a higher police force or just a different police force, went to have a look and said, look, hotel's just over there. Can we go? And he was like, yeah, fine. So we sort of managed to get out of the cordon and walk. And they say it's a 200-metre walk. And there was odd Marseille fans dotted around, you know, as you'd see an hour and a half after the ground, but absolutely fine. Got back to the hotel. Loads of Marseille fans in the hotel, all absolutely fine. Had beers with them in the hotel. No problem at all. Robert Pires strolled into the hotel, which is a bit of a bonus. The suavest man I've ever seen. Like, genuinely makes David Beckham look like the Wealdstone Raider. Like, without a shadow of a doubt. Like, this man, like, genuinely looked like he just walked off the set of a Bond film. Just never seen any, like, just, yeah, no words. The suavest man of all time. And he was brilliant. Like, all the French fans obviously sort of getting involved. He was like, offering photos, selfies, etc. He was standing at the hotel reception, so checking. I think he'd done TV for the game or something. So he's standing in, checking in at the hotel, and there's obviously someone checking in next door to him. And he sort of turns this person, was like, all right, yeah, do you want a photo? I don't know, this person, probably the one person in the hotel that had no idea who he was. But yeah, it was really friendly, and all the fans in there were, you know, I'd say absolutely fine. You know, just as you'd expect.
Good. So, I mean, that's good. That's good, right? Like, that's what we want to hear.
What you wanted. And I think there were some flashpoints on Wednesday night, I think, talking to a few fans who'd been there on the Wednesday. But even that seemed to be more police getting maybe a little bit spooked at the prospect of there being... I think it was probably over-exuberance on the part of fans who are at bars or whatever. And obviously the police getting a little bit spooked at the prospect that something might kick off. But again, from everything that I saw, One, it was just so heavily policed that there was never going to be any issues. And yeah, two, police were very, in my experience, they were very, very reasonable. A lot of fans were having selfies with the riot police after the game, and they were really happy to take photos and just have a bit of a chat. I don't know, obviously we weren't one of the ones who got left there for 2 hours after, another 2 hours later. So I don't know if it got a bit tetchier, the longer that people had to wait. But certainly from our perspective, it was absolutely fine.
Good.
So yeah, good trip all round. And it was still bonkers. I mean, still doesn't really sink in that you've gone to watch the Albion play away in, one of the most hostile grounds in Europe, arguably. But yeah, I mean, you did have the odd. So you had a lot of fans who were in the ground, obviously trying to goad the Marseille ultras, etc. And most of them looking about 12 years old and thinking, mate,
of course,
yeah, the standard stuff that you're always going to get. But
the big boys on Twitter.
Yeah, exactly.
The big boys on Twitter with their player avatars.
Yeah, all of that, like that. But actually, what the nicest thing was is that I probably saw 50, maybe 15, 20 people that I've seen at Albion games, regularly over the last 25 years. So genuinely, the people there were genuinely the ones that I remember seeing at, Northampton and Carlisle and Exeter and Crewe and Walsall and all these places. So it was nice that, there was this kind of, sort of like movie, like arc, sort of narrative arc to it. That actually, there was a lot of people who've been there from the, been there through all of the kind of the low points, who were there enjoying it, which is really nice. And I think there was a lot of other people in the same boat, seeing people you hadn't seen for a while. And literally everyone just, you didn't really need to say a word. It was kind of everyone just like waving to someone and just pointing around going, how mental is this? Like, and that was just basically it. So it was a really nice experience that obviously, it's easy to say, but I don't think the result would have necessarily diminished the experience an awful lot. I know it's easy to say once you've come back from 2-0, etc. But on some levels, I don't think it would have made a huge amount of difference. And I think final shout out, obviously, to Tony Bloom. I think you're probably aware of the fans who were on the delayed flight from Heathrow, which was, I think it was running 4 hours behind schedule, which Tony Bloom was on, and his uncle Ray were on it as well. And he managed to arrange for coaches to take those fans pretty much direct to the ground. So I think they missed maybe 15, 20 minutes of it, but to get
the worst bit then, really. That's
basically
perfect.
Yeah, they did. They missed the worst bit. So even like his organisational powers extend to even being able to miss out conceding goals. Which is pretty good. And obviously he came on the tannoy. You've probably seen the video that came on the tannoy on the plane. And said, paraphrasing, but I said something like, "This isn't your captain speaking. Lewis Dunk's at the Velodrome," something like that, which is it's a nice line. But yeah, I mean, hats off to him again. It's kind of what you'd expect. It's what you'd expect from Tony. And he could have looked after himself and just had a car waiting and whisked him, gone off to the ground and he's all right. But I think everything we know about Tony and his family, you wouldn't expect anything less. So yeah, hats off to the man.
Good review of Marseille away.
Yeah.
Let's plug our friends at Greene King here in the bridge. So for the 23-24 season, Together BHA is sponsored by Greene King Sport, where football is more than a game. Greene King sports venues are showing every televised fixture over the course of this season. That means Liverpool today was available at your local Greene King. So instead of turning to the internet for a dodgy stream, get your mates together and get down to your local Greene King pub and get closer to the action. Greene King Sport have just recently launched the Greene King Sport Instagram about 3-ish weeks ago page that will be home to all fan content, deals, competitions throughout the season. So drop them a follow on Instagram, and you won't just be the first to know about all this, but you'll be helping out us as a podcast as well. Together BHA on Instagram as well. We need to grow that channel badly, because if Elon decides to lose his shit and press the off button at any point, that's probably going to be the logical move place. So if you could follow Together BHA and Green King Sport, that would be great. So moving on to Liverpool today, they played same day as us, a couple of hours after, right? Barely any difference really. And there was going to be that obvious talk of how can we deal with the squad depth and the rotation. Solly March filling in at left back, Purvis' opinion, out for about a month. Thankfully, the international break is quite a large chunk of October.
Oh, correction, about 8 or 9 weeks.
At least 2 of those weeks is international break.
Yeah.
But Tariq Lamptey deputised very well in Marseille. And let's just jump straight into Liverpool. Craig, are you feeling confident with Solly March at left back as well?
No. But I think the times that Lamptey has filled in at that left back role, he has been arguably the man of the match whenever he does, right? So there's a natural tendency to go, oh, well, if Lamptey's completely out of the squad, then, we're up shit creek without a paddle, right? So, but we know Solly's a defensive winger, or he can be a defensive winger. So was I happy or no? Was I concerned? Yes, a little bit, because this constant rotation that we're talking about with Marseille and Villa and Liverpool, and having to do this Thursday, Sunday, and making wholesale changes, just doesn't fill me with confidence in any way. We'll come on to how well he did and how he played, but I don't want to see Solly March at left back. So the answer was I really wasn't too confident, but I was more confident in having Gross and Belieber starting as well. So that sort of eased my concerns a little bit. I always ask for that like combative element that Lamptey does bring as well, because he's high energy. So you need that if Lamptey's not going to be there. And thankfully we add that. But on the whole, yeah, it's changes and changes, right? That's what you get when you didn't buy a left back in the summer.
Yeah, isn't it just? We did also see a front duo of João Pedro and Evan Ferguson, something that I think a lot of us have been keen to take a look at this season. And this is something is not right in Evan Ferguson world, I'm going to be the first to say. And he hasn't been since the ball was kicked this season. He's just seemed off. Like he just seems like a second off the pace, a second off the reading of the game. Like his shots are not this. Like everything is just off with Evan Ferguson. Do you two feel the same way? And like, I don't know what's going on. I know that De Zerbi has already said he had like a fitness issue at the start of the season because he was dealing with something like some injury. I think it was a quad injury or something like that. He had something that was like causing him irritation, so he was like being careful with rotating him. But this is not the same Evan Ferguson, is it? That we've got used to seeing coming on the scene. Is it? Do you think there is something going on physically or mentally in the background, or do you think this is, you can't always operate at the level he was at the end of last season levels, or do you think it's just the rotation hurting him? Like what?
I think it's a combination of all of that. Obviously, he came into the season having had an injury. It's not going to help him. He's obviously been unwell recently. They didn't say what it was. I'm assuming he had COVID. I'm going to assume he had it. Because what was it, the Athens game that he came in and then?
Yeah, you and me both, Evan. we both came out of that worse for wear.
I think he was clearly unwell, and I think he then had 2 consecutive 45 minutes, didn't he? After that, he just clearly looks a bit knackered. So I'm wondering whether he's still feeling the effects of COVID. And clearly, he burst onto the scene and was playing at a really high level, which is, as you say, difficult to maintain. I mean, still scored a hat-trick against Newcastle, so he's not been totally totally off it. But yeah, I think it's just it's an unfortunate combination of factors, and you could argue that actually maybe him having a break from having the international break off would be good from the perspective that he's clearly been struggling a bit. But at the same point, if he goes off to Ireland and scores a few goals, then is that going to have a more positive impact overall. But I'm with you. I'm sort of. I don't think I'm going as far as you, Josh, but there's certainly something a little bit off. And if I had to put my finger on it, I'd suggest he's probably just not fully recovered from COVID. I mean, from your perspective, you know how you felt still for a couple of weeks after. If you're a professional athlete trying to do it at the top level in the Premier League, a little bit off it, I can imagine it takes it out of you. So, yeah, I'm reserving judgment for the moment.
Oh, he's 19 now, right? Like,
yeah.
And you're asking for a high level and a very consistent level of performance whilst not playing every game. So, with the illness is one thing, but even if you aren't ill, I'm using that dreaded rotation word again, right? But if you're not playing every game and you're not getting into that regimen or that sort of consistency, and you're playing 45 minutes here, you're playing 20 minutes here, and you're not getting consistent game time or playing with the same players, it can have an impact as well. So it's the pros and cons of rotation, really, and just European football in general. Combine that with the fact that he's a 19-year-old guy and we're expecting him to score 20 goals a season. He's going to have his days where he's not 100%, and that's fine.
Another young starter, Mr. Adingra, however, had a heck of a start to the game and pretty much an entire game, didn't he? He was excellent throughout. But for such a young lad, he is incredibly smart at times, and it's just exemplified in the goal that puts us 1-0 up. Obviously, horrible ball from Alisson, just a hospital pass if there ever was one. Into the returning Alexis McAllister's feet, promptly pickpocketed immediately by Adingra. And how clever was that finish to just make the decision he did? Just everything about it was just absolute perfection, wasn't it?
I mean, it's sort of what you wanted João Pedro to do at Chelsea when Sanchez presented him with the ball. Like, it's in that situation, I think most goalkeepers in that situation are thinking they're going to get lobbed. So that's what they're on the lookout for. So to just, as you say, have the calmness to think, oh, actually, I've got like half the goal to aim at. I don't really need to do anything daft here. It's one of the situations where what is actually the easiest option looks like it's the clever one, if that makes sense. Like, he's done something that you go, oh, that's brilliant, but actually it's the simplest option at that point. You keep it low, you keep it away from the goalkeeper. There's no risk of it going over. You got loads of the goal to aim at. But you say, for a kid who's not played a huge amount in the Premier League, to deliver that under pressure with not much time to think about it was brilliant. But he's done that. I mean, even pre-season when he scored, who did he score a couple of goals against? Brentford. One of his goals in the Brentford game,
Newcastle, I think, wasn't
Newcastle,
it?
Whichever one he scored a couple of goals in. There was one of his.
You were there for this, whatever one it was, Craig. You were there, weren't you?
Yeah, it was Brentford. Yeah, like the steel ball over the top.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly. Similar.
And that's the thing, like the decision making, right? If any other guy does that and misses horribly, you go, what a terrible decision that you just made. Why didn't you carry that ball forwards and have a better shot on goal, right? And I think that's where his technical level is so good that, that sort of level of decision making is backed up by him actually being able to do it. So he is that sort of, he's thinking, all right, yeah, I'll just hit it from here. Like, why not? Whilst I guess a more traditional striker or a more traditional winger would probably fancy their chances by taking a couple of extra touches. So it's just a different way of thinking, or maybe just that level of risk or anticipation that he's just able to do. But for 21 years old, and for him to come in, obviously he had an amazing year in Belgium last year anyway, but for him to come in and start playing at the level that he is, and it'll take time, it always does, but like that Matoma and Adingra on either side is starting to look pretty interesting, especially if João Pedro is in the middle. That attacking options are really good. So I thought he did really well today.
And he had Andy Robertson on toast for most of the game.
Yeah.
Consider that's a player who's
especially top of the second half. Like, it was almost like our only game plan was like, let's get it over.
I don't know. Andy Robertson's obviously, he's not at the level that he was operating at maybe a couple of years ago, but this is still someone who is Liverpool captain. And has been their first.
He's a very good left back. Yeah, he's a very good left back.
Yeah, I mean, he's basically won everything. Well, he has won everything with Liverpool, And Adingra is just
Not quite with Scotland.
No, not quite. But Adingra is bursting past him like he's not there.
Yeah,
to be honest.
I mean, there was one moment late in that second half where I think he, I don't know whether he megged him or what he did, but it was just like he got, because the sun was on the TV.
Yeah, I know the one you're talking about.
Oh my god! Like he just
was that the setup?
I'm sad I wasn't
should have
there.
been João Pedro's winner.
That is, yeah. I'm sad I wasn't there because of the stupid train strikes today, because that would have been right in front of me to be able to see that. Like,
if João Pedro puts that in, which we should have done, but if he puts that in, that becomes, that's an incredible assist created.
Oh yeah, like that's going to be on TV for ages.
Yeah.
But
he did really well. But my only point on actually having March there was that him and Mitoma both attacking together down the left caused Liverpool all sorts of problems. They couldn't deal with having both of them there. So it's difficult because obviously both of their goals came from pretty much the left back area. I mean, obviously Salah's got so much space for that first goal. There's not much, just isn't anyone there. And similarly, the confusion for the penalty also arises kind of from the left back area. So from that perspective, you're thinking, yeah, actually not so great. But yeah, countered by, they just couldn't deal with March and Mitoma attacking in tandem. So it's sort of, it's what you get from.
We battered them, right?
Yeah, we did.
That first half.
The big thing is that is Roberto De Zerbi's style in a nutshell. Basically, having those two, they could not deal with having those two attackers there, and he's obviously decided in thinking who's going to cover at left back, because he could have picked Igor there at left back and had Van Hecke, and he's obviously just thought, our best chance is to outscore them.
Yeah,
and it was interesting. It was really interesting to see Mitoma and March there, considering that they won't have played together on the same side. I don't think at all. If they have, a couple of times, if that, they linked up really well together. So it's a difficult one. Whilst I'm with Craig, I don't really want to see Solly March at left back, but the trade-off is that I do want to see March and Mitoma attacking together down the same side. So it's sort of a conundrum that you can't have both. You can't have both elements of that. But I think we will. Over the next 2 months, we're going to see March at left back a few more times.
I think we're going to have to.
We're just going to, because Lamptey, we know Lamptey's not going to be fit for every game for the next 9 weeks.
Well, he said that, didn't he, in his press conference yesterday? He just said that it's not worth the risk playing Lamptey. But James in the chat asked the question, and Craig, I'd love to hear your opinion on this. We've talked ad nauseum about our back four. And what we want to do with it. How are you feeling about Igor's performance today? Obviously, he went off hurt. Hopefully, just a minor thing. He's got 2 weeks to recover at this point, right? But Craig, how are you feeling about Igor's performance today?
I like Igor. Like every time I've seen him, he's been solid. He's good with his feet. He's built like a small tank. So like that also helps. So, having a ball playing centre back that is, built in that way, and can play, across that back four. Every time I've seen him, he's been good. Like I have no reservations about putting him in. Like I keep a broken record, but it's constantly changing your centre back pairing that is hindering us. It's not the individuals. I'm happy with Dunk. I'm happy with Van Hecke. I'm happy with Igor. Less about Webster, but we can. By the by, right? But if any of those three, I'm perfectly happy with. It's just constantly rotating them and then having them injured like Igor was today. Hopefully it's nothing too serious. But I thought it was fine. I just, alongside Dunk, and again, Dunk makes everyone look better. Apart from a manic 5 minutes at the end of the first half today, they were fine. Absolutely fine.
Well, I think my personal opinion on this Dunk, Igor, and the 5 minutes of madness is that it was exacerbated by the fact that we are rotating these centre-backs and Dunk filled in at right centre-back instead of left. Because both of those times, if you look, they've switched spots for both goals. March is like in the middle of the centre midfield for some reason. We don't know why that is. But like, I assume probably because he's pressing, right? Like when he probably shouldn't have. But the pair of them, if you watch both goals back, like Dunk and Igor are on opposite sides, and neither of them look like they know what the hell they're doing. Like they don't know where they're tracking, who they're tracking, where they're supposed to. They're just in horrible spots. And I know we talked about it, and you've just said it again. Like rotating these centre backs just isn't working. Like I think you just need to commit to these. These are the two I'd have at this point, right? Like Dunk, Igor, done. Like you put them both back there. They're clearly very good defenders. Dunk is not a natural left-sided centre back. We don't need to pretend him to be anymore at this point. We have one. Like he's also, like you say, an absolute tank. So like he can back up maybe the lack of physicality from a Lamptey or a March playing on left back by force, right? Like for me, I would be starting Igor and Dunk from now on, unless otherwise specified. Like for me, like Webster is now fourth choice, fifth. Really, because I'd still had Veltman over him at centre back.
And you need to keep your other centre backs happy, right? So if you're talking about it from a player management perspective, if you go 2 or 3-0 up, feel free to go ahead and do that, right? Like it's more of a case of let's start the game as we should and stay consistent in that way. If you have already won the game with a period of time to go, feel free to chuck Webster and Van Hecker in there because they're more than capable. It's just the rotation that's hindering us. So it's just starting with the different combinations that's getting me a little bit.
Do you think it will get better because the more we rotate, the more those combinations will have a chance to play together? Do you think it's just at the moment they haven't played enough together, but it will get to the point where they are used enough to playing with each other that it will work?
Potentially. I mean, these guys play with each other every day, right? So like they're in training every day, and they must go through this, over and over again until the cows come home. So I don't know. I'm not exactly a professional footballer, am I? So I just want us to have a settled back four, like every other team in this league does, right? So there's not many other teams apart from Arsenal right now that are switching their goalkeeper every 2 games. Nor is there a team in the league at the moment that is also swapping their centre back pairing every game, literally every game. So that it is something. There's a case there, but obviously it needs must. We're doing it for a reason. It's because we have to, because we're playing Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday, Wednesday, Saturday, and then Thursday again. There's a lot going on. As this season goes on, less Europa games, Carabao Cup is done with, thank God. FA Cup, we can take a little bit lightly if we want to. And with the international breaks, for once, it actually comes to our advantage. We kind of need that extra week at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, this has been from Manchester United backwards. We've had, Marseille, it was Van Hecker Dunk at centre-back. Against Villa, it was Webster Dunk. Then against Chelsea, it was Van Hecker Igor. And then against Bournemouth, it was Dunk Webster again. Then against Athens, it was Igor Van Hecker. Then against United, it was Van Hecker and Dunk. Then against Liverpool, obviously today, it was Igor and Dunk again.
I went out on a limb to say it changed every game, but it is literally every game.
Every single game. There's not a single constant. Not even Dunk is a constant in there because he obviously had his injury period. So like you can't even have the consistency of, as you say, like everyone looking better next to Lewis because he didn't play. So like you've even had that rollout as well, like which has been a problem.
I do expect that now that he's fit and if he remains fit, that Dunk is that constant. And I think he obviously as our captain, he kind of has to be. But I would like that. And again, I fully understand the rotation. I completely understand it and get it. But I just need one, just one constant. Because if it's not going to be the goalkeeper, it has to be someone, right? So it has to be Lewis Dunk.
Jason Steele becoming as good as he is with his distribution is probably the worst thing that's ever happened to us in terms of goalkeepers, because I thought Verbruggen looked very good today. Like there wasn't really any complaints with Bart at all. The penalty is a penalty, right? Like that's what it is. And I don't expect him to save that goal.
Didn't get a million miles. He wasn't a million miles away from the penalty either.
No, he wasn't. And he's actually got a decent penalty record for the Dutch national team for the under-21s. Like he's actually
It was
got a very
calm, it was
solid
very
record.
calm on the ball. Like, there were a couple of times in the second half where he was under a bit of pressure, being closed down by Diaz, Nunes, and Salah, and he didn't look phased. He got out, him and Dunk and Baleba got out in a nice little triangle. So he's got that Bournemouth error out of the way. And I think, I don't know if there's a certain amount of loyalty to Jason Steele, whatever it might be, but yeah, I would like.
I think that's exactly it. Frankly, personally, I think there is a little bit of loyalty. I think that sort of stuff is really important to De Zerbi.
But I think we talked about in one of the very early episodes. We talked about at what point did we think Verbruggen was going to be, the number one, and I think we all pretty much concluded, but by the end of the season, Verbruggen was going to be the number one, but we just weren't quite sure at what point it will happen. I'm leaning towards thinking that by December, January time, I'd like there to be a conclusive number one.
I think Steele will turn into the cup goalkeeper when the third round of the FA Cup comes in.
Yeah, that's kind of what my thinking was. And I think part of it is, I think you're right, Josh, I think there's a loyalty aspect to it. I think there's an aspect of wanting to reward Jason Steele as well. Some of these glamour games in Europe, for someone towards the end of his career or coming towards the latter part of his career, who, to be quite frank, when you watch the Sunderland documentary, whatever that is, 4 or 5 years ago, if you'd have said at that point Jason Steele is going to start in a Europa League game away at Marseille, some people would have carted you off in a straitjacket, to be quite honest. So there's an element of that, and I think probably it's also not putting so much pressure on what's Bart 2021 22 something like that to pitch him straight in. So I think it's more, there's a whole lots of stuff at play, but I think the ultimate end game is they are easing Bart towards being number one without putting too much pressure on him, at the same time being mindful of Jason Steele. But I don't think we're a million miles away from Bart being the number one.
Yeah, I think so. I hope so. Anyway, halftime comes around, 2-1 down after being absolutely dominant for 40 out of 45 minutes. Substitutions made. Harvey Elliott off, Gravenberch on. A couple of minutes later, about 15 minutes later, Welbeck on and Van Hecker on for Igor and Evan Ferguson. Obviously, Igor was an injury in Force 1. But I honestly thought we were the better side pretty much for 85 out of the 93 minutes. I thought we were much better than Liverpool were. Helps that their entire play style is built to press us, which is what we want them to do. And he's not my man of the match today, at all. But just every minute of football that goes by, I am convinced that Baleba is just so good. He's just so comfortable. Now I don't know whether it's Baleba, because I've heard that on a couple of the Brighton things, or now Balaba, which is going around on all the commentary that I'm hearing. So I don't know, but he was superb today, I thought, as well.
You can tell, I think, towards the end of the game, you can tell why De Zerbi doesn't think he's ready. I don't, it's a fitness thing. it's not his play style, because we know how he plays and what he does. And we've already seen how good he can be. It's just being able to do that for 90 minutes straight, which, Caicedo is so good at, just that stamina of being able to be that strong and that willing 95 minutes every time. So, but from what we saw today, is exactly what we want. I think everyone knows that's exactly what we want, and he's showing it already. So the whole Brighton have done it again thing is I'm gonna beat this until it's dead. But we have paid £23 million for this guy. So there's a heightened expectation for me at the minimum, is that we haven't got this guy in from Ecuador and sort of developed him and pushed him forwards. This is a guy that needs to be performing now and needs to be performing quickly for me. So it's still very good. I'm not being an asshole. It's still incredibly good, and him being able to adapt and come in so quickly at 19 years old is ridiculous. But there is a price tag element to that, and we need him You can tell today that we need someone like that in our centre mid. And the sooner he gets up to speed and gets that fitness in, we're going to be one hell of a team.
I think I'm going to hang my hat on this. I think he has the potential to be better than Caicedo. A more rounded, an even more rounded version of Caicedo.
Well, he's 3 years younger than Moises.
Yeah.
And he's already doing what he's doing. So I think that's a fair point.
He's more of a Basuma for me than Caicedo, isn't he?
I think he can do both. I think he'll end up being a hybrid of the two. This is the kind of classic thing where fans go, do Brighton just have a lab where they just build, like, this is what we need to build, and we just put this player together, like in a test tube.
No, he was absolutely phenomenal. Let's talk about a couple of the key moments right at the end there. Penalty or no penalty for Brighton, with the handball to Van Dijk.
I'll be honest, I don't know what the handball rule is these days. So I don't know. I think that's what we've seen. I mean, it's gone up. It's clearly accidental because it's bounced up off his thigh onto his hand. So I'm convinced it's accidental. But whether that actually makes it a penalty or not, it's got to the point where I've got no idea. I've got no idea what the rule should be. So all I can say is I think it's accidental, but whether that makes it a penalty or not, I don't know.
Yeah, I think by the rules / law of the game, in the Europa League, that would be a penalty. But in the Premier League, it's not. From what I can gather. I believe that right. I believe that in the English game, if the ball is deflected off of a body part of yours onto your hand, and your hand isn't in, like, I don't know. I don't think it matters, actually. Like, if it comes off of your body part onto your arm, it cannot be a handball because it's originally hit like a legal part of your body. Whereas in Europe, in the Europa League or the Champions League, I believe that would be a penalty. And likewise, it would be a penalty because that's the handball rule. I don't know what even federation would be ruled, right?
De Zerbi, De Zerbi was annoyed enough about it to get booked for it. So
that doesn't take a lot, does it?
Yeah, it probably
the small breeze would give him a yellow card.
Yeah, valid.
The benchmark I always use is how would I feel if that was given against us? And I'd have been furious if that had been given against us.
I think that's it. It's just a rule, isn't it? Like, if it has come off of another body part and then hit you and the hand is in a natural position, then yeah, I think any team would feel aggrieved at that. So
I think it's a fair decision.
Luckily, didn't matter too much because about 10 minutes later, Mr. Lewis Dunk giveth and taketh away in this one. Totally at fault for some of the really poor stuff at the back. Both today and against Marseille, and then pops up with 10-ish minutes to go before the end of the game. Solly March whips in a free kick, finally doesn't dick around with it, actually puts the ball into a dangerous position. And it seems like every Liverpool player decided to think that another Liverpool player was going to handle it.
Yeah, that was it.
And Lewis Dunk is just there like, well, if no one else is going to have it, like, I'm just going to score. Like, and
yeah, it was a weird
we
one.
were well back in it then, weren't we?
It was such a good ball in. And I think basically no Liverpool player wanted to go for it because they were all worried about scoring an own goal. It seemed to be like, the angle of it coming in, everyone's thinking, if I get a touch on this or I try and clear it, I'm going to slice it in. But the irony was, obviously, by leaving it, it gave Lewis Dunk. It's still a good finish. It's one of those ones where if this is the good thing is, it sounds bizarre to say it, if that's on Lewis Dunk's head, that's ending up in the back of the North Stand. That's not ending up in the back of the net. So it's one of those occasions where it's a good thing that it's hit his shin or wherever it hit. It's a good finish.
It's such a good ball in, isn't it? Like, we're so dire at set pieces that it just. I was more surprised about the fact that we could actually put a decent ball into the box for once.
Do you reckon that was it? Liverpool players were like, "We'll just leave it because they're set pieces."
Well, clearly this is just
isn't
going
going. This isn't going in.
Well, and then it just typical Albion fashion. The next free kick from the exact same bit, we hit the one-man wall and it goes out for a corner. And I was like, right, we're now back on brand, right? That's just, we've reverted the type. So I think, yeah, the element of surprise that we've actually put a decent ball in is why all the Liverpool players were just stunned, and that's why Dunk was able to score. I'm convinced of it.
Yeah, you're not. Yeah, it's a good point. Agent Alexis was in full display today as well, wasn't he? I've seen a couple of Liverpool games this season, and I've always been rather warmed to see how well he's playing. He was dog shit today, wasn't he?
Absolutely.
So bad.
Giving the ball. I mean, if you're being generous, he recycled the ball well a few times. He kickstarted a few attacks, but it's, to be honest, it's the bare minimum for what you'd expect for, you know, a World Cup winning midfielder with bucket loads of Premier League experience. He was not good. Not good at all. And you know, he's such a nice guy that it's not like, I'm not suggesting he threw the game, but he's such a nice guy that you can kind of almost at a subconscious level thinking he didn't want to do well against Brighton.
Him and De Zerbi were like besties, like at full time. I don't know if you saw that, but
yeah,
they were like loving life, like two best mates that hadn't seen each other in ages, hanging off of each other. Like
they showed McAllister getting off the team coach and getting really good reception as well.
Well, he basically done a lap of honor at the end of the game. If you kept the coverage on for long enough, like he was walking around with the rest of our team, so it was like, okay, cool. A lovely bloke, obviously an incredible player, but he wasn't great today.
He left in the right way. I think that's so nice to us as Brighton fans, ain't it? Like, because we've had so many not recently.
And also, it's just one of those players where it's like I would have him back in a heartbeat. Like just because of just his, not just only his ability, but just what he brings, I guess, culturally to certain teams as well. Like he just seems like a nice guy and a bit of a leader. So he's one of the very few players where I'm glad it's left on good terms, because if he ever wanted to come back, there should be a contract waiting for him.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Now we're nearing the end of the game, and we should really be 3-2 down after one of the most unbelievable misses I've ever seen from an opposition team at the Amex. And I think it was Graven. Was it Gravenberch or I think it was Graven.
Yeah.
Once again, Albion were cut apart down the left side. Great ball in. And I mean, I think Adam said it in the chat of like, did we just like rip into space and time and like cause that ball to somehow like move off? Like what happened? Unbelievable miss. And João Pedro goes, hold my beer, fella. I just cannot comprehend how a striker, mostly striker, right? Like offensive player, he plays just about anywhere up there. But he is paid to score goals, right? Score or create goals. That is João Pedro's job. It is astounding to me that a lad of 21 years old, 21 years of age, who carried Watford on his back last year, walk up to the Velodrome on Thursday and coolly and comfortably slot home a penalty to take a point away from a raucous Marseille, and then bottle it in front of a North Stand of adoring fans.
With like 7 yards out. Yeah, just, but there's that. I love João Pedro, by the way, and we should be starting every game for me, and is one of our most important players for this entire season and beyond, right? But he has missed a couple of clangers already this season, and that one as well. There's been a few, right? I can't remember him off the top of my head, but he does have a miss in him. Thankfully, he's very good at the penalties, and we seem to get quite a few, and I fully expect us to get a few. But yeah, he has a miss or two in him, unfortunately. And what he brings to the team far outweighs, you know, those sort of misses. I'm not saying I'm not criticizing his performances in any way, but he does have a miss in him. He's not as clinical as maybe we wish, but if he was, he would probably be playing for Bayern Munich or something like that instead. So
I think 2-2 was probably the fair result on balance of everything. I agree with Josh. I think we were the better team, but obviously we got away with that miss from Gravenberch. But yeah, I mean, I'd have taken a point before the game started. Quite happy with the point at the end.
I think we can probably all agree with that. Likewise for the Marseille game, to be clear.
Yeah.
I think 2 draws is nothing to be upset about.
No, and to be honest, after that 6-1, you wanted to come back. You wanted to, when you look at it and you go, our next two in the league are Liverpool and Man City. Anything, to be honest, anything above 0 points from those 2 games is a bonus. I know Liverpool are, not the Liverpool that they were a couple of years ago, but still, anything above 0 points is a bonus.
Yeah, for sure. And I think someone else said in the chat, James, I think it was said in the chat, like, it's just nice to see that we're able to come back from behind and actually secure results. And I think, I think he said that, like, now we've cracked that, if we can just learn how to play against anti-football, we'll be just fine. I suspect if that happens and we can learn how to play against anti-football as well, like, De Zerbi will be gone to like Real Madrid or something. And I think that the fact that we are so defensively comical is the reason that he'd still.
If he can crack that in the next 3 months, we'll finish in the top 4.
Probably, yeah.
Like, genuinely, like, if we can cut out. I even think the anti-football thing doesn't even necessarily bother me so much. If we can cut out being quite, we don't even have to be perfect in defense. If we can cut out even being ever so slightly less diabolical than we are now, we still have a very good chance of the top 4.
I mean, top 5, right? Like, that's all it needs this year, I believe.
Yeah, top 5. Yeah, top 5 will do. We're not going to be a million miles off it.
What a wild conversation.
Like, it's mad, isn't it?
Yeah.
But you know what? All bets are off. The whole world has already gone bonkers for the Albion. So,
Yeah, true. You guys spot Pascal Gross in the first half, like today, where he just slotted in between Dunk and Igor. Did you see that?
Yeah, it's mad, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I mentioned it at the top, but like just De Zerbi trying new things and being able to think about other things, because the double pivot's been found out, right? So like it's kind of just, we need to figure that out against certain teams. So dropping Gross right back and then having Baleba basically do all of the work in centre mid is a bold move. But yeah, he's clearly tinkering around with what we have. And
it was actually something I was thinking about before we started recording, which was that when you've got Gilmour, Baleba and Gross, and I think we can all agree that those are 3 players that you'd want to be in the starting 11.
Yep.
It's very difficult to accommodate. In our current setup, it's impossible to accommodate all 3 of them. And it's really difficult because you just don't want to leave out Pascal Gross. But at the same time, our most balanced central midfield partnership is probably Gilmour and Baleba. But then
I think the obvious answer is you have Gross up top in that central attacking midfield role if you revert back to the 4-2-3-1 that De Zerbi has played most of his career, as opposed to this 4-2-2-2-2 that we're throwing out there right now. And I think
then you're dropping Ferguson for Pedro, no?
Well, exactly.
Well,
that's
then
the issue.
There's no answer. You say it's really difficult. Lallana seems to have just become a coach these days. I don't think we'll see much more football out of him, to be quite honest.
Which is fine, frankly, because he seems to be a superb coach. So I will take that all day.
Yeah, comfortable with that. But yeah, that's the only thing. So it was really interesting that he's obviously trying out, as Craig says, he's trying out these slightly different things with Gross, especially. I mean, can he turn into this amazing? Could just turn into a sweeper, just sitting there pinging balls around.
I mean, we talked about it a little bit under Potter, where on occasion he would have Pascal Gross drop back, and he played what I was calling the quarterback role. Like he was literally just there pinging the ball around like a quarterback. And
it's kind of what
I literally turned around. Yeah, a little bit. And I turned to Brit today when he did it, and I was like, he's back doing it. Like, yeah, that's great. Like, I love him in that role because I think he's so good at it. And I thought he was good today. But yeah, we end this period. I'm going to choke. we end this period of football going into another international break. Highest goal scorers in the Premier League still with 21 goals. And again, only the bottom three conceding more than us. You can't say that you're not getting your money's worth when you're going to watch a football game with Brighton and Hove Albion.
I think I saw something. We on average our games have 4.6 goals a game. I think it is
bonkers.
So yeah, money's worth is an understatement. Wow,
it's exactly what we were promised under De Zerbi before he even took the job. Everyone was like, "You're basically going to win. You're either going to win or lose every game 4-3."
There have been 37 goals so far in our 8 games.
I think they said today was his 50th game in charge, and we scored scored 100 goals or something.
It's just insane. Man of the match or your man of the week, I suppose, like whatever you want to do. Obviously, Lamptey got yours for Marseille, but
Lamptey on Thursday, today Adingra.
Craig.
I'm gonna give it to Baleba today. Like first of many, I'm sure it is. But I just think he's so fun to watch as well. So yeah, going up against a very good midfield as well. Just held his own, especially when he was isolated a lot of the time. And for Marseille, it was Lamptey. I think you can't really look past it. If João Pedro was on the pitch a little bit longer, it would have been him, obviously. But yeah, Lamptey.
Yep, fair enough. For me, I'm going Adingra as well for today. I thought he was just outstanding. Like I thought he was just so good. Like I just can't believe he's only played so little football, and like he's naturally a left winger, and he's been put out on the right to just like see what he can do, and he's just doing whatever he wants out there. Like we've just talked about how good Andy Robertson is as like a player, like, and he just
ruined him,
like rinsed him. Yeah, he was so good. And then yeah, for me, like both fullbacks, I think for Marseille, I thought Veltman was excellent as well. Like obviously he didn't have the same impact that Lamptey has, and not many players are going to have the same impact as Lamptey when he's on form, right? Like because of just the sheer speed of the lad. But I thought Veltman was very good as well. Like Aubameyang is shit anyway, but like I've never Veltman just made him look irrelevant for a lot.
He barely touched. I mean, from where we were, like I forgot Aubameyang was playing.
Yeah,
that he was subbed off.
And that was Veltman's side. Like I thought that he was very, very good. And I think it's not coincidence that we're talking a lot these days about things coming down our left-hand side, and we're not really talking about our right side, which it's a little bit like when you don't talk about a ref, it's a good thing, right? Like the fact that we're not having to talk about Veltman much probably tells me that he's doing a really good job. And I think I would just give it to them both, really. I thought they were both excellent fullbacks against Marseille. And I just want Veltman to play every game as well.
Yeah.
He's so good, isn't he?
He is so good. For £900,000. Let's not forget that.
I mean, just today, like when I can't remember who it was I think it was Luis Diaz, like went and like ran at him like one-on-one. And if he got past him, like that was it. Like he's not going to catch him, right? And like Veltman, like I think Luis Diaz expected him to just keep backing off, and Veltman allowed him to take 2 touches, was like, nah, mate, and just absolutely dug him out, took the ball off him, clean as whistle, and like put the ball back into transition for us. He's just so good. International break next. Lewis Dunk out to the England games again. Great news for us and Lewis, well deserved. Obviously, when we come back, we've got Manchester City, Ajax, and Fulham back to back. Not an easy set of games, but it does get a little bit easier from there, right? Like Fulham, Everton,
Sheffield
Ajax, Sheffield United, Forest. Like,
yeah.
Then there's a lot. Obviously, the Ajax game is not going to be easy, but like it's seemingly looking like they're the biggest basket case of the group so far. Like, which is
really helpful that they drew again.
Again, yeah, exactly.
Like we can be a win against them, and we can be well in it.
Yeah, I mean, we've got them back to back, right? Like they're their next 2 Europa League fixtures. If we can take 6 points off of them, like that's I mean, we're not just well back in it, like we're almost there really already.
Yeah, we are. I'm going to finish on a controversial Europa League preference. I would rather finish third than second.
You'd rather go to the Conference League.
Correct. If you finish second, you get a Champions League club dropping down.
Right.
And there are some rough Champions League groups this year. Like
you look at Newcastle's one.
Someone from the
PSG,
Europa League,
Milan, Newcastle.
It's going to have to play one of those. Yeah.
Like finishing first, fine, no issue to that. But nah. Basically, Conference League, you basically just got to beat Villa or have someone else beat Villa before we have to.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's I'm finishing on that.
No, I hear you. All right. Enjoy your international break, everybody. I'm not even sure who England play this international
Don't
break.
even know.
Either of you two have anything?
No idea.
Craig?
I was no, not a clue. Not going to watch it anyway.
Yeah, I don't really care either. Is the honest answer.
I saw Gross is getting a call up again as well. Which is like
Ferguson's
again
back as well.
Yeah.
Ireland.
So again, slightly annoyed that they're not going to get a break. Like that's the level that we're at now, where it's like we want Dunk in the England squad, but not when we're playing 3 games a week, please. So yeah, hopefully it's just friendlies and you give them 45 minutes. But yeah, I'm happy for everyone that's being called up, obviously. But yeah, 3 games a week and then jetting off somewhere to play international games as well can't be easy.
2 home games for England, so at least Donkey doesn't have to go anywhere. Australia and Italy, one a friendly and the other one the game that we really should qualify for the Euros in.
So you'd expect him to maybe play the Australia game, but probably not the Italy game then.
No, you got to have Maguire in for the Italy game, right? Like, got it.
Oh, I want him to knuckleball a top bins free kick against Matty Ryan.
No, we don't. We want him to keep that.
No, against Matty Ryan, we do want it, friendly or not. That would be excellent. All right, fellas. Well, thank you everybody for listening, and we will speak to you again in a couple of weeks when we come back from the break for City away. What a great pod that'll be. So have a good week, everybody, and we'll speak again in a couple of weeks from now.
Nice one. Cheers all.